I'm Clara Reynolds, 33, a software engineer who thought being generous meant being loved. My parents and I had just finished one of our usual calls. Small talk, family updates, my sister Olivia's endless excuses about her failing business. It was background noise, nothing special. I was about to set my phone down when I heard it. A faint rustle, a voice that shouldn't still be there. "Living with her is unbearable," my father said, his tone flat, almost disgusted. "We're only staying because of her money." My hand froze mid-air. My breath caught. I thought I'd misheard, but then came my mother's voice, soft but clear. "Just keep her happy until we're stable again." And then Olivia laughed, that familiar, sharp, mocking sound. "Stable? You mean until she pays off my next credit card bill?" The room seemed to tilt. I stood there, phone pressed to my ear, realizing they hadn't hung up. They were still talking, still laughing, about me. It felt like the ground had disappeared beneath me. I couldn't move, couldn't even cry. Every word dug deeper, carving a new truth I didn't want to believe. My own family, the people I worked myself sick to support, had turned me into an ATM with a pulse. The voices on the other end kept going, carelessly peeling away the illusion of love I'd built around them. My mother's cheerful tone, my father's protective smile, Olivia's fake warmth, it all crumbled at once. Every "thank you," every "we're so proud of you," every "we're family" sounded like a scam I'd fallen for. I sank into the kitchen chair, the phone still pressed to my ear, heart pounding so hard it hurt. They thought I was gone. They thought I couldn't hear them, but I did. I heard everything. When the call finally went dead, I stared at the screen, the silence loud enough to choke me. My reflection blinked back in the black glass, pale, shaking, furious. That was the moment something inside me shifted. The version of me who forgave too easily, who paid every bill without asking questions. She was gone. What replaced her wasn't rage, not yet. It was clarity, cold, calculated clarity. I looked around my quiet house, the one I'd bought so they could live comfortably, and for the first time it didn't feel like home. It felt like a stage, one where I'd been cast as the fool in their little family play. My fingers tightened around the phone. I didn't delete the call log. I didn't block their numbers. I wanted that record there, a reminder of what I'd heard, and why I'd never let it happen again. I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I sat in that chair until the clock struck midnight, staring into nothing, replaying every lie disguised as affection. And then I decided I wouldn't confront them yet. Not until I understood exactly what I was up against. They thought I was the same naive daughter they could use. They thought I'd keep providing, keep believing. They were wrong. Because after tonight, I wasn't their provider anymore. I was their lesson. If you discovered your family was only staying for your money, what would you do? Would you expose them, or stay quiet and make them show their true faces first? Stay with me. The next morning, the real performance began. Morning came heavy, like the air itself was pretending. The house was quiet but tense, every sound carrying a strange echo. The smell of coffee drifted through the kitchen, but it didn't feel comforting anymore. It felt rehearsed. My father was already at the table, newspaper open, eyes hidden behind the headlines. He didn't look up when I walked in. "Morning," he muttered, voice flat. My mother followed, smiling too brightly as she reached for the toaster. "You're up early," she said, her hands moving too quickly, like she needed something to do. Then came Olivia, trailing in with her phone in hand, scrolling, smirking at whatever she saw on her screen. "Morning," she said without looking at me. I watched them move through the kitchen like actors in a scene they'd performed 1,000 times. They didn't know I'd heard everything. They thought they were safe. I poured my coffee, stirring it slowly, careful not to let my voice shake. "Did everyone sleep okay?" "Like a baby," my mom answered too quickly. Dad grunted. Olivia shrugged. "Sure." The air between us was thick, every word balanced on the edge of something unspoken. I studied them, every twitch, every glance. My mother's eyes darted away whenever mine found hers. My father flipped his newspaper pages too fast. Olivia couldn't even pretend to care. So, I smiled. I had to make them believe I was still clueless. I joined their little breakfast charade, asked about errands, nodded at small talk. I even laughed once. It felt foreign. When they left the kitchen, I stayed behind, staring at the half-empty plates. My mother's lipstick stained her mug. My father's spoon lay crooked beside his coffee. All the details of an ordinary morning, except nothing about it was ordinary anymore. That day, I moved through work like a ghost. My body typed code, answered emails, smiled during meetings. But my mind was still back in that kitchen, cataloging every lie wrapped in politeness. I thought about the way my mother's voice trembled when she said my name, the way my father avoided looking at me, the way Olivia scrolled her phone, smug and untouchable. They weren't family now. They were subjects under observation. When I drove home that evening, I didn't feel dread. I felt focus. The silence of the car was comforting. It gave me space to think. I knew what I had to do: stay calm, stay quiet, and start gathering proof. At dinner, I acted normal. My mother chatted about the neighbor's new car. My father complained about gas prices. Olivia bragged about her next business idea. I nodded, smiled, played along. My heart didn't race anymore. It was steady, calculating. After they went to bed, I sat at the kitchen counter with my phone. The glow from the screen painted the room in pale blue light. I opened the Notes app and typed, "Dad, avoids eye contact." Mom, overly cheerful. Olivia, mocking tone, dismissive. Then I added more lines, small observations from the day. Their words, their actions, their patterns. Each one was another piece of the puzzle I was starting to build. When I locked my phone, I sat still for a long time, listening to the quiet hum of the refrigerator. This was the same house, the same walls, but everything had changed. Every corner felt staged, every sound rehearsed. They thought I was still their obedient daughter, the one who paid for everything, who never asked questions. But now I was watching, listening, learning their rhythm, and I knew something they didn't. Their act might have fooled me once, but the next scene in this play, that one would belong to me. By the third morning, the routine had already turned into a ritual of lies. Dad hid behind his newspaper. Mom filled the room with fake laughter. Olivia scrolled her phone, pretending to be busy. I blended in perfectly, smiling when expected, speaking only when needed. But beneath the calm, I was taking notes, not just mental ones anymore. That night, after everyone had gone to bed, I opened my laptop and started a file. At the top, I typed one word: observation. Then, line by line, I began to document everything. Dad asks about my salary again, pretends it's casual, avoids eye contact. Mom, new shopping bags, same excuses. Olivia says her brand is about to relaunch. No proof. I didn't stop there. I added times, receipts, things I'd overheard, tiny details that might mean nothing now but would matter later. I wasn't sure what I was building, but it felt like armor, or maybe ammunition. The more I wrote, the calmer I became. My anger hardened into focus. I realized something that night. I couldn't change who they were, but I could make sure they never used me again. The next day at work, between meetings and lines of code, I added more to my list. Small behaviors I remembered. Dad's probing questions about my 401k. Mom's obsession with my work bonuses. Olivia's passive-aggressive remarks about how lucky I was to have money. Every detail was a thread, and I was finally starting to see the web. By the end of the week, my notebook had turned into a strategy. I created a second file, one they would never see, plan. It was simple, methodical, untraceable. Step 1, change account passwords. Step 2, open a new savings account, private access only. Step 3, document everything, every bill, every charge, every favor. Step 4, wait, watch, let them reveal themselves. That night I caught Olivia hovering near my laptop on the kitchen counter. When she noticed me, she jumped back and forced a laugh. "Just checking the weather." I smiled, but my gut twisted. She was fishing, and that confirmed it. Later, I checked my browser history. Sure enough, a tab was open to my online banking page. My stomach went cold. She wasn't just nosy, she was looking for something. I didn't confront her, not yet. Confrontation gives power to the guilty, silence confuses them. Instead, I made my next note. Olivia tried to access my laptop. That night, I sat in bed, scrolling through everything I had written. It didn't feel like journaling anymore. It felt like collecting evidence for a case no one else knew existed. A case where the people on trial were the same ones who used to tuck me in at night. The hardest part was pretending nothing had changed. Pretending I didn't know the truth. Pretending I was still their provider, their safety net, their fool. But every lie they told me now was one more nail in the coffin they were building for themselves. A few nights later, Mom came home with more shopping bags, designer ones this time. "It was on sale," she chirped, waving a silk scarf. I smiled. "Good for you." She didn't notice how tightly I was gripping the counter. Dad started asking new questions. "What's your company paying for stock options these days?" His tone was casual, but I saw the gleam in his eyes. Curiosity laced with greed. And Olivia, always the bold one, left her tablet open one night. I glanced at the screen, mock-ups of her fashion line, each image captioned, "Launch funded by Clara." My chest tightened. Funded by me. Money I never approved. That was the moment my plan shifted from self-protection to something colder, smarter. I wasn't just going to guard my money anymore. I was going to make sure they couldn't touch another dollar of it, ever again. I saved my files, locked them behind encrypted passwords, and stared at the dark reflection on my laptop screen. My family thought I was still asleep in the dream they built for me. But I was wide awake now, and I was done being their provider. I was becoming their consequence. It started with a small mistake, a bill that didn't look familiar, a $500 dinner at a steakhouse I'd never been to. I almost brushed it off as an accounting error, but something in me hesitated. That hesitation changed everything. That night, after everyone was asleep, I sat at my desk with a stack of mail I'd been ignoring. I opened each envelope carefully, one by one. Credit card statements, utilities, insurance notices, all in my name. Every single one. My pulse quickened as I flipped through the pages. There were purchases I didn't make, transactions from stores I'd never stepped foot in, designer brands, jewelry, expensive electronics. Then came the one that made my blood run cold. A wire transfer of $2,000 to a business name that looked oddly familiar. O&R Design Studio. Olivia Reynolds. My sister. I checked again, then again, hoping I was wrong. But there it was. Multiple transfers, each a few $1,000s, spread out over months. All from my accounts. All unauthorized. My throat tightened as I scrolled through my online banking app, every click confirming the truth. My family wasn't just taking advantage of me, they were stealing from me. The next morning, I acted normal. I cooked breakfast, smiled, and poured coffee for everyone. My hands didn't shake, not once. My mother chatted about a new sale downtown, my father mumbled about his stocks, and Olivia bragged about a brand collaboration. I listened, nodding politely, memorizing every lie. By lunch, I couldn't take the act anymore. I found my mother in the kitchen unpacking shopping bags, a silk blouse, a new purse, shoes still wrapped in tissue paper. Those are nice, I said, keeping my tone light. She smiled, a little too proud. They were on clearance. I tilted my head. With what money? Her smile faltered. What do you mean? I watched her hands freeze over the handles of the bag. I saw some transfers last night, I said slowly. A few large ones. Do you know anything about them? She blinked too fast, forcing a laugh. Oh, those? Just small gifts for Olivia. You know, to help her get back on her feet. My stomach clenched. Small gifts? They were thousands of dollars. My money, my inheritance. Without asking me? I said quietly. She avoided my eyes. Don't make a big deal out of it, Clara. We're family. We share. That word, share, hit me like a slap. I smiled instead of shouting. Of course, Mom, I said, my voice calm. I was just curious. She relaxed instantly, thinking she'd smoothed it over. But inside me, something locked into place. She'd confirmed it without realizing. They weren't clueless or desperate. They were deliberate. That evening, I skipped dinner and sat at my desk again. The lamp cast a soft glow over the papers scattered across the wood. I opened my encrypted file, Observation, and added a new entry. Mom lied about transfers, claimed it was gifts for Olivia, confirmed manipulation. Then I added a new note under Plan, transfer savings to new account, secure inheritance funds, remove access privileges from family accounts. Before midnight, I'd already set up a meeting at my bank for the next morning. I created new login credentials and changed every password I could think of, from my payroll deposit to my digital wallet. As I worked, the house was silent except for the faint hum of the refrigerator. I could almost hear my mother's words echoing through the walls. We share. No, I thought. Not anymore. I backed up every document to a secure drive, saved screenshots of the transfers, and locked the physical statements in a file box under my desk. Then I leaned back and exhaled for what felt like the first time in days. They had treated my trust like a vault they could plunder, but that vault was closing, permanently. When I turned off the light and looked out the window, I saw Olivia's car parked under the street lamp, her silhouette inside, phone glowing in her hand, probably texting friends, pretending to be successful. I almost pitied her. Almost. Tomorrow, I'd go to the bank. By tomorrow night, they'd never touch another cent of mine again. The next morning, the sun rose on a new battlefield, quiet, invisible, and mine. I walked into the bank right when it opened, a folder of statements tucked under my arm. The teller smiled politely, asked how she could help, and I smiled back with the same calm precision I'd been practicing all week. I need to open a new account, I said, one that only I can access. Within an hour, it was done. My new savings account, my new passwords, my new beginning, sealed away from the people sleeping under my roof. As I signed the last form, the pen didn't even shake. The woman behind the desk smiled. It's good to stay organized. I smiled back. It's good to stay prepared. By noon, half my inheritance was safely transferred. I moved the rest of my savings, adjusted all automatic payments, and closed the joint expense account my parents once had access to. That account had been their feeding tube. Now it was gone. I left the bank feeling lighter than I had in months. The air felt different. For the first time, I wasn't trapped. I was untangling myself, piece by piece. When I got home, the house was still. My mother's voice echoed faintly from upstairs, her usual morning chatter to a friend on the phone. I caught the words shopping later and Clara won't mind. I smiled to myself. She'd find out soon enough. I sat down at my desk and opened my laptop. Then, step by step, I began locking down everything. My accounts, my passwords, even my cloud drives. I set up two-factor authentication and recovery codes that only I could access. Every click felt like a stitch closing a wound. By the time I finished, my phone buzzed. A message from Olivia. Hey, can we talk about my next collection? I have a new idea I think you'll love. My fingers hovered over the screen. For a moment, I thought about replying, asking her how it felt to fund her dreams with someone else's money. But I didn't. I deleted the message instead. That silence was my first move, my quiet retaliation. That evening, I came home from work to find my parents whispering in the living room. Their voices dropped when I entered. Mom smiled too fast. We were just talking about dinner plans, she said. Dad nodded, eyes darting to the side. Olivia wasn't there. Sounds nice, I said, keeping my tone even. I'm not hungry. I walked to my room and closed the door, their muffled voices still carrying through the walls. My laptop hummed to life, glowing in the dark like a secret I was ready to keep. I opened my encrypted file again, observation, and updated it. Funds secured, passwords changed, joint access removed. Olivia, texted about new collection, deleted without response. I read it twice, then added one last line. No reaction yet. They don't know they're already cut off. The next morning, I watched from the kitchen as Dad checked the mail. I could see his confusion through the window, his brow furrowing as he flipped through the envelopes. Probably looking for a statement, a transfer, a sign of the money he'd grown used to seeing. He didn't find it. Mom came downstairs not long after, her usual upbeat energy tinged with irritation. She checked her phone, frowned, and muttered something about payment errors. Olivia stormed in last, slamming her phone onto the table. My card's not working, she snapped. I poured my coffee slowly, pretending not to hear. Oh, I said softly, keeping my voice neutral. That's strange. Their panic was subtle but satisfying, each one of them scrambling in quiet confusion, not yet realizing the source. I didn't have to say a word. The silence did the talking for me. That night, I sat in bed, staring at the ceiling. I wasn't angry anymore. I wasn't even sad. What I felt now was control, sharp and deliberate. They had stolen from me for years, but now every dollar they touched was gone. Every string they pulled had snapped. And the best part? They wouldn't even see the storm coming until it hit. Because revenge doesn't always need fire. Sometimes it begins with silence and ends with everything falling apart quietly. Sunday came wrapped in false peace. The smell of roasted chicken filled the house, and the table was set like it always was. Polished plates, silverware lined perfectly, candles flickering in soft light. It looked like any other family dinner, except this time, I wasn't here to eat. I sat across from them, hands folded, my heartbeat steady. My father carved the chicken, my mother passed the potatoes, and Olivia scrolled through her phone, barely glancing up. It was all so normal it almost made me laugh. I waited until the plates were full and the room was quiet. Then I set my fork down. I heard your call, I said. The sound of silverware clinking against china froze mid-air. My father's knife hovered above the cutting board. My mother's smile faltered. Olivia's head jerked up. What call? Mom asked, her voice light but her hands trembled. I looked straight at her. The one where you forgot to hang up. The one where you said living with me was awful, but you were staying for my money. Silence dropped like a stone. Dad coughed, clearing his throat, trying to play it off. Sweetheart, that was just talk. We were frustrated. You're overreacting. Mom nodded quickly. We didn't mean it, Clara. You know how families are. People say things when they're upset. Olivia leaned back in her chair, smirking. Wow, you actually listened in on us? That's creepy. Her tone snapped something inside me. I reached into my pocket and pulled out my phone. I swiped once and set it on the table, screen glowing. On it were screenshots, bank statements, transfers, and her post calling me a stingy control freak who hoards her money. You want to talk about creepy? I said softly. Let's start with stealing thousands from me and calling it sharing. Mom's face went pale. Clara, please. No, I said, cutting her off. I let you live in my house. I paid for everything. And you didn't just take advantage of me. You laughed about it. You planned it. Olivia's smirk faded, replaced by a glare. You're being dramatic. You've always needed to control everything. You can't stand it when someone else gets help. Help? I scoffed. Is that what you call wiring my money to your fake company or lying to my face about it? Dad slammed his hand on the table, his calm cracking. Enough. This isn't how we talk to family. I met his glare without blinking. Family doesn't steal, Dad. Family doesn't lie. For a long moment, no one spoke. The air felt heavy, thick with the truth they couldn't hide anymore. Finally, I stood, my chair scraped against the floor. I want you all out of my house by tomorrow morning. Mom's fork slipped from her hand. You can't be serious, she whispered. Olivia let out a bitter laugh. You'll regret this, Clara. You'll miss us when you realize you've got no one else. I looked right at her. I already realized that a long time ago. Dad tried one last time. Clara, be reasonable. We're family. I grabbed my phone from the table, my voice steady. Reason left the moment you decided to treat me like a paycheck. I walked toward the door, their voices chasing me, Mom begging, Dad shouting, Olivia cursing under her breath. But I didn't stop. I didn't turn around. When I reached my room, I closed the door behind me and locked it. My hands were trembling, not from fear, but from release. The mask I'd been wearing for weeks finally cracked, and the silence that followed was pure, clean. Downstairs, I could hear them still arguing, their words blending into meaningless noise. They were scrambling now, not out of guilt, but out of panic. I sat on my bed, opened my notes app one last time and typed, "They know." I said it out loud. Tomorrow they're gone. Then I put my phone down and exhaled slowly. For the first time since that night I heard the call, I felt something close to peace. They had taken everything from me except one thing, control. And tonight, I had taken it back. By sunrise, the house was quiet. Too quiet. I walked downstairs, and for the first time in years, I didn't hear my mother humming or my father's footsteps shuffling toward the coffee pot. The dining table was half empty, a few crumbs, a cold cup of tea, and the faint trace of perfume lingering in the air. They were gone. Their rooms looked stripped bare. My mother's closet doors hung open, empty hangers swinging like ghosts. Dad's books were gone from the shelves, and Olivia's room looked like a hurricane had passed through. Makeup scattered, drawers half open, a missing laptop charger, a perfume bottle left behind on the nightstand. They hadn't even bothered to say goodbye. I stood in the hallway, the silence pressing in. For a moment, it almost felt sad. Almost. But sadness didn't fit anymore. What I felt was relief. My phone buzzed, 3 notifications lighting up the screen. Mom. We're sorry. We didn't mean to hurt you. Can we talk? Dad. You're overreacting, Clara. We can fix this. Olivia. You didn't have to kick us out. Call me. I stared at the messages until they blurred. Their words sounded the same as always, half apologies wrapped in manipulation. I turned the phone over, screen down, and let the silence swallow it. Instead, I got dressed, grabbed my folder of bank statements, and drove downtown. The small law firm I'd found online was quiet on Monday mornings. The receptionist greeted me, her voice calm, professional. I have an appointment, I said, sliding the folder across the counter. Minutes later, I was sitting in a glass office across from a woman named Ms. Carter. She was sharp-eyed, efficient, and didn't waste time. I told her everything. The stolen money, the false transfers, the manipulation. She didn't flinch once. We'll start by securing your assets, she said, jotting down notes. You've already changed your accounts? Yes, I replied. Good. Next, we'll send cease and desist letters for any unauthorized access, and we'll review your property rights to make sure they can't come back and claim anything. Her tone was factual, unemotional, exactly what I needed. No pity, no judgment, just clarity. I signed the documents, initials and dates filling the margins. Every signature felt like a wall going up, one that would finally protect me. When I left the office, the air outside felt cooler. The city moved around me, strangers walking, traffic buzzing. But for the first time, I didn't feel like I was drifting through my own life. I was steering it. Back home, the emptiness of the house felt different. Not lonely, just peaceful. The spaces they had occupied were open now, breathing again. I walked through each room, the kitchen where my mother used to hide receipts, the living room where Dad read his paper, the hallway where Olivia shouted into her phone, and I realized how much energy they'd drained from me without me even noticing. The weight that used to sit on my chest was gone. That evening, I brewed a cup of tea and sat by the window, watching the sun dip behind the trees. The phone buzzed again, another message from Mom. Please, Clara, we love you. We can't survive without you. I almost laughed. The truth was, they'd survive just fine. They'd just have to do it without my money. I set the phone aside and opened my laptop instead. There were new notifications from the bank confirming that all accounts were fully secured. The new account balance blinked on the screen, untouchable. Mine. I leaned back, exhaling slowly. The worst was over. The chaos had burned itself out, and all that remained was quiet. But peace comes with its own kind of ache. I thought of Dad teaching me how to ride a bike, Mom brushing my hair before school, Olivia sneaking into my room to borrow clothes. Were those moments ever real, or just rehearsals for what came later? I didn't have an answer, and maybe I never would. All I knew was this: I'd survived the storm. I'd built my walls, secured my future, and taken my power back. They could call, text, beg, or blame. It didn't matter anymore, because this time I wasn't the daughter who kept forgiving. I was the woman who finally walked away. 6 months later, the house was gone. I sold it quietly. No announcements, no long goodbyes. Just one real estate agent, a few signatures, and a closing date that marked the end of a chapter I'd once thought would last forever. My new apartment was smaller, simpler. One bedroom, white walls, and big windows that let in the morning light. It didn't echo like the old house did. It didn't hold ghosts. Every corner belonged to me. Every inch of space was clean, quiet, and honest. Most days, I worked from the kitchen table with a cup of coffee and soft music playing in the background. The quiet no longer felt heavy, it felt earned. I didn't have to tiptoe around anyone's moods or hide my laptop out of fear someone would peek at my finances. I could breathe. Christine, the only friend who'd known the full story, came over one Friday night with takeout and a bottle of wine. She stepped inside, glanced around, and smiled. "This place feels like you," she said. "Yeah," I replied, looking around at the little apartment that finally felt like home. "It finally does." We ate noodles on the couch and laughed about work, about life, about things that had nothing to do with betrayal or family. For a while, I almost forgot what it felt like to carry that kind of pain. After she left, I sat on the balcony, the city lights flickering below, and opened my laptop. Out of habit, I checked my new bank account. The balance blinked back, untouched, safe. My inheritance, my salary, my savings, mine. For the first time in my adult life, it felt like security, not a burden. I hadn't heard much from my parents or Olivia since the lawyer's letters went out. Occasionally, I'd get a stray email or a voicemail from an unknown number. I never listened. Word through a mutual acquaintance told me enough. They were struggling. Dad was working part-time at a hardware store. Mom had started selling her old jewelry online, pretending it was a vintage collection. Olivia's so-called fashion brand had collapsed completely. Her last investor pulled out after the money trail became public. Her social media went silent after that. No more photo shoots, no fake success stories, no designer lies, just quiet. People expected me to feel vindicated, maybe even satisfied, but I didn't. I felt distance, like they belonged to another lifetime, another version of me. The version that believed love and loyalty could be bought with sacrifice. Some nights, though, I still thought about the little things. My dad teaching me to ride a bike, Mom dancing with me in the kitchen, Olivia sneaking into my room to borrow my clothes and laughing when I caught her. Those memories hurt the most because they were real once, before everything else replaced them. But pain doesn't mean regret. I had learned what love without respect looks like, and I wasn't going to fall for it again. Now when I wake up, I make coffee and open the curtains. The world feels wide again. I spend weekends exploring the city, going to art shows, hiking trails, and working late because I want to, not because I'm running from something. The freedom isn't loud. It doesn't look like revenge in a movie. It's quiet, steady, patient, almost invisible. It's the sound of no one depending on me for the wrong reasons. It's peace that no apology could ever buy. One night, while backing up old files, I found the folder I'd named Observation. I hovered over it for a long time, the mouse trembling slightly. Then I clicked Delete. The confirmation box popped up. Are you sure? Yes, I whispered, and pressed Enter. It was over. Completely. I closed the laptop, leaned back, and smiled to myself. They had taken my trust, but I'd taken my life back. And sometimes that's the sweetest revenge of all. Not watching them fall, but learning how to rise without them.